Eicha Rabasi, in the end of Eicha Rabasi, Rebbe Oimer, Kimei Oilam. What is the pasuk comparing the karbonos of the Asad Lavai will be pleasing to Hashem like the Yemei Oilam, the days of the old, Kimei Noach, like the days of Noach. Shenemar, Kimei Noach Zoisli. So the Medrash is saying Kimei Oilam is a reference to the pasuk of Ki Mei Noach Zoisli. Over there, the word ki and mei are two words, but the Medrash is comparing the ki mei oilam to the ki mei Noach Zoisli, which is in Yeshaya Nun Dalet. L'chayra, this drash is coming to say that the karbonos of La'asid Lavoi will be pleasing to the Rebbeinu Shalom as the karbonos that Noach was makriv when he left the teva. As the pasuk says, on those karbonos, vayorach Hashem es reach hanichoyach. But lefizel l'chayre, it's a bit strange that the reference is made with the words mei noyach. Mei noyach is really the waters of the Mabul, which preceded the Hakrovas HaKorbonis, which was still during the time of the Charoinaf. The Vayorach Hashem Esreach Anichoyach of the Korbanos of Noach came after the Mei Noach. So why is this pasuk, which is coming to say that the Korbanos of La'asid Lavai will be pleasing to the Rebbeinu Shalom, like the Korbanos of Noach, the pasuk is using the phrase Ki Mei Oilam, which is a reference to Ki Mei Noach, which is the waters of the time of Noach, which is the time of the Mabul. But this seems to go along with what we learned in the Midrash, that Noach's time that he spent in the Teva, he was being oisik in an avodah that was purifying the kinim tasel teva compared to the kan of the Mitzorah that's Mitayr. And Memela, it comes out that the Vayorach Hashem Esreach Enichoyach, that was La'asid Lavoi, that was after he left the Teva. But how did it come about? What made those karbonos so pleasing? It was what Noach did during the time of Ki Mei Noach Zoisli. It was the avodah of Noach during the time he spent in the Teva that qualified the karbonos of Noach when he left the Teva, and therefore we're referring to these karbonos as Ki Mei Oilam, Ki Mei Noach Zoisli. In other words, that was the Bechatzrois Elokeinu Yafrichu. That was a consequence of the Shesulim Beveis Hashem in the Teva. But we really need to understand, first of all, what did Noach need to be purified from? We say Tevoscha Metaharoscha. Noach was a Ish Tzadik Tomim Hoya B'doyroisav Esa Elokim Es Halech Noach. Why did he need to be purified? But you know, it's interesting that on this same pasuk, Ki Mei Noach Zoisli, that the Eicha Rabasi is darshaning l'shevach, we find Chazal somewhere else that they darshan this same pasuk l'gnai. The Zohar says, Tochazi, come and see. Ma bein Moshe l'shar bnei Alma. What's the difference between Moshe and all other bnei Alma, all other people of the world? When the Rebbeinu Shalom said to Moshe, "Va'ato hanicholi, ve'esa oischoli goy, leave me alone. Let me destroy the Jewish people, and I'll turn you into a great nation." Miyad Omar Moshe. Immediately Moshe responded, "V'chi eshboig dineyoin di Yisrael begini. Will I abandon Klal Yisrael for myself? Kemoda ovad Noach, like Noach did." The kiven the Amalei Kutsha Berich with the Yeshezev Lebe Tevusa, that once the Rebbeinu Shalom told him that he will save him in the Teva, Loi Boy Rachami al Alma, he didn't ask Rachamim for the rest of the world, V'isavidu, and they were destroyed. Ubegin Kach, and therefore Ikrun Mei HaMabul al Shmei, Kemodat Amrit, Ki Mei Noach Zoisli Hashem Ishbati Me'avor Mei Noach Oid al Oretz. So the Zohar is saying, Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm not going to be like Noach, who didn't care enough about the rest of the world and agreed to save his own life, even if everyone else will be destroyed. And for that reason, the Mabul is called Mei Noach, the waters of Noach, because he's held guilty and responsible to an extent for the Mabul. Moshe says, I will not be so. So you see that this same pasuk, that the Eicha Rabasi, Ki Mei Noach, is darshaning, L'shevach, that those Mei Noach brought about the Va'arva LaHashem Minchas Yehuda v'Yerushalayim Ki Mei Olam Uchashanim Kadminiya is brought about the karbonis that were so pleasing to the Rebbeinu Shalom. This same pasuk is actually, according to the Zohar, putting Noach down and saying that he's held responsible for the Mabul. The emes is that the what the Zohar is saying also goes against the Pshute Shel Mikra, not only against the Eicha Rabasi, because this pasuk of Kimei Noach Zoisli Asher Nishbati. The pasuk says that Hashem made a shvur that there should never be a Mabul again. So this pasuk is a positive pasuk, not a negative pasuk. Nevertheless, the Zohar manages to put into this pasuk a criticism on Noach, that he's held responsible for the Mabul, in spite of the fact that the pasuk is a positive pasuk, a pasuk that's coming to tell us that Hashem made a shvur that he won't bring a Mabul. And that shvur actually came as a consequence of Vayorach Hashem es reach hanichoyach, the korbanos of Noach, which is what the Eicha Rabasi is teaching in the Mei Noach Zoisli. Nevertheless, the Zohar says in this pasuk state a taina on Noach. The emes is, the Mei Mabul came because Hishchis kol basar es darko, and when it was Vatimolei haaretz chamos, the Mabul came. Now, if the Mabul is called al shmoi shel Noach, Mei Noach, it must be that Noach Bedakus, on some level, had something of this chamos, of this hishchis kol basar es darkoi, because these Mei HaMabul came for that, and is being called al shmoi. L'chore, the fact that he was loy boya rachami, the fact that he wasn't mispal for them, it's totally not connected with the chait that the Mabul came for. How could the Mabul that came for Hishchis kol basar es darkoi vatimolei haaretz chamos, how could that Mabul be called on the name of Noach just because he lacked compassion, he lacked empathy, he didn't daven enough, he didn't care enough for the people? That's why the Mei HaMabul are called al shmoi. It's interesting that the word chamos and the word Mei Noach both add up to the same gematria of 108. So it would seem that in a sense, the loy boya rachami is considered a dakus of chamos. One thing we know now, that Noach had what to become purified from, because he was loy boya rachmi. And he needed the kinim taseh, just like the kinei hamitzora, teivoscha metaharoscha, to purify himself from the pgam of loy boya rachami al alma. And we find that Noach, when he, through his experience in the teva, was purified from this deficiency. Because there's another Zohar, and the Hashmatas to the Zohar, in the end of Chumash Bereishis Shmois, it says like this: K'sheyotza min hateva, v'ra es ha'olam chorev. When Noach came out of the teva and he saw the world destroyed, hischil livkois lefonov. He began to cry to the Rebbeinu Shalom. V'amar Rebbeinu Shalom, nikreisa rachum. Aren't you referred to as a rachum? Hoyo l'chol rachem al brioisecha, etc. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers him. So you see that Noach's experience of the Teva actually purified him from the pgam of lack of empathy, lack of compassion. Now he's already crying over the destruction of the world, and he's wondering how the Rebbeinu Shalom brought the Mabul. Now, L'chora Avada, Noach knew all along that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Nikra Rachum, but nevertheless, it didn't touch him. There were 10 doiris, May Adam Vad Noach, that were Machisim Uboim, and the world was Olam Kimen Hagoy Noach, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't punish them, and as the Mishnah says, Lo Hidiacho Kamo Erech Apayim Lefonov, and Noach was well aware of that. So he knew that the Rebbeinu Shalom was an Erech Apayim, he knew that the Rebbeinu Shalom was a Rachum, but nevertheless, when the Rebbeinu Shalom says that I'm destroying the world, it didn't touch him. And he didn't wonder, and didn't say, how could you, Rebbeinu Shalom, you that are referred to as a Rachum, how can you destroy the world? And Dafka now, he opened up to the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a Rachum. Dafka now, after he saw the destruction. L'chorah, it's mamish upside down. I mean, before he saw the destruction, and he knew that the Rebbeinu Shalom was a Rachum, he wasn't bothered. After he saw the destruction, now he's wondering, how did you do this? So you see that the experience in the Teva actually purified Noach and opened his heart to the point where HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nikra Rachum bothered him. It bothered him how Yitochen, the Rebbeinu Shalom, is doing this. And this is Mavur according to the Midrash Tilim, in Perek Lamed Zayin, that says like this: Kisha Omar Avraham leMalki Tzedek, which is Shem, the son of Noach. Avraham said to them, Keitzad yotzosem min hateva, how did you come out of the Teva? Omar loy b'tzedakah shayinu oisim. You know how we got out of the Teva? With the tzedakah that we used to do. In the merit of the tzedakah that we used to do. So Avraham asks Shem, V'chi aniyim hoyu sham. Who did you distribute tzedakah to? Were there aniyim in the Teva? B'haloi loy hayisem sham elo Noach ubanov. V'al mi hayisem oisim tzedakah. Omaloi al hachaya v'habeheme v'ha'oif. We gave tzedakah to the chayas, the behemoths, and the oifis. Loy hayinu yeshenim kol halaylo. We didn't sleep all night. Elo hayinu noisnim lifnei zeh v'lifnei zeh. Pam achas icharnu. Once we were late, v'yotza avi meshubar, and our father Noach came out a broken man. So we see that the asik in tzedakah and the nesiyah ba'oil, the carrying the burden of the behemoths, the chayas, and the oifis in the teva, that's actually the tzedakah that purified Noach from his not caring about the destruction of the world. And therefore, when after this experience, Noach's heart was open to the presence of Rachum v'Chanun, and therefore when he comes out of the Teva, he starts crying about the destruction of the world. Before, it didn't really touch him yet. After he actively got involved in helping, in doing, in caring, and the emes is the human capacity to care. You know, there's a fascinating lashon that the Yismach Moshe, you know, in Soif Parshas Kiseitze says, the hine shamati, the be'emes ein rachmonus v'chanina v'chemlo b'tivei habruin. That's not natural. Rakhu hashefa mirachmonus haboirei al bruav. That the fact that we have the capacity to care, to empathize, that comes from the shefa of rachmonus haboirei al bruav. That's part of our being at Tzelem Elokim. V'nimtza ki ma shenire rachmonus l'shum nivra. If we see rachmonus, we see a person display a midah of rachmonus. We're seeing rachmonuso yizborech shemashpia mi rachmonuso al bruav. And the Yismach Moshe concludes, Ad kan shomati v'niskabeli. Ad kan I heard, and niskabeli. That when you see in humans the capacity to be giving and kind and caring and compassionate, you're actually seeing the Rebbeinu Shalom's rachmonis. But by the same token, the more a person involves himself in acts of giving, of being kind, of caring, of tzedakah v'chesed, he's actually revealing within himself the tzelem Elokim, and therefore he's revealing within himself the ma hu rachum af ato hayei rachum. He's revealing with the hu within the ato. He's revealing the hu chanun within the ato, and therefore after Noach spends a year in the teva, tevoscha mitaharoscha, the ma kan mitaher es hamitzoira af tevoscha mitaharoscha. After Noach spends a year in the teva of giving and caring for all the bruim, for all the balei chayim, he now connects with the midas harachum, and he asks, Ato shenikreisa rachum, how did you destroy the world? So ba'ofen that, you see, Vayar Hashem ki rabba roa sa'odom ba'oretz v'chol yetze machshavos liboy rak kol hayoim vayinochem Hashem ki asa sa'odom ba'oretz vayisatzev al liboy vayoyim Hashem emche sa'odom asher barosim al pnei adam me'odom ad behema ad remes ad oif hashomayim ki nichamti ki asisim. In other words, the world didn't meet the Rebbeinu Shalom's goals. A world of rabba roa sa'odom, when people are just selfish and care only about themselves, is not a world that expresses the olam chesed yibane. And therefore, since olam chesed yibane, a selfish world, is nichamti ki asisim. And Noach was matzah chen be'enei Hashem because he at least wasn't involved in Chamas. But still, if he wasn't boyer rachami, al alma, that lack of empathy is also shayich bedakus to the sugya of selfishness, to the sugya of caring just about yourself, to the sugya of Chamas. Therefore, Mei Noach is bigmatria Chamas. And therefore, the Mabul is called Al Shmoi Shel Noach because he didn't care enough about others. By the Anshe Torah Mabul, it expressed itself in its worst form, in the form of Chamas. By Noach, it expressed itself bedakus, in the loy boye rachame al alma, and therefore Noach needed to be purified al yedei the avodah of tzedakah and the teva until he was zoche to olam chodosh ro'o, as the Midrash says. When he came out of the teva, he saw a new world, a world that reflects the divine chesed. In all Ma'aseh Bereishis, it says Vayar Elokim ki tov, but by Brias Ha'adam, it doesn't say ki tov. Not only that it doesn't say ki toiv, it actually says loy toiv. Because the toiv of man is not natural. Yetze leiva adam ra mina urov. Mishoshu nina lotzeis la'olam. Because self-consciousness is really the root of our quest for independence, which is our movement away from the source of good. And therefore the Adam Levado is loitov, only when he sacrifices from himself. When man gives one of his ribs from himself, then he exits his Levad, and then he's elevated to a madrega of toiv hayos. Only through empathy, only through Nesiyah Ba'oil of others is a person, does a person represent the Adam Yechidi Nivra. He represents the Yochid Be'el Yoinim. Al Kol Panim, so that's the thing. Today we don't have really Karbonis, which is the Kinei Mitzorah that I'm attire. But Avada, we don't have the Shor Kesev Oyez. But we have every day, opportunities for kiyakriv mikem korban, the being makriv korbanos, So I just want to mention what the Groa writes in his letter Livnei Beisoy. He writes ve'isha es ru'usa tsameach ki ze mitzvah gedola l'chol adam ubezeh roiv ha'torah l'sameach l'adam. The Vilna Gaon writes, Roiv HaTorah. is l'sameach livnei adam, making other people happy. And Reb Itzel of Volozhiner writes in the name of his father, Reb Chaim Volozhiner, v'hoyo rogil lo hichiach oisi. He used to give me toichecho al shero'o she'eineni mishtatev b'tzare da'achrina. He saw that I don't participate enough and I don't care enough about other people's tsar. V'koi hoyo dvorei eilai tomid. So he used to say to me all the time, Shezeh kol ha'adam, loy la'atzmoi nivra. Man was not created to be self-serving, even spiritually. Rak lohoyel la'achrini, kechol asher yimtza bekoichoi lasis. The emes is, so this is like dvarim noikvim adat ahoim. Yeah, that lahoyel la'achrini bechol asher yimtza bekoichoi lasis, that's man's mission. That's man's mission. You know, the Ramban says in the end of Parshas Boy that kavonas kol hamitzvah shenamin be'elokeinu v'noida elov shehu baranu v'hi kavonas hayitzira she'ein lanu tam acher b'yitzira harishona v'ein la'elim b'tachtonim chayfetz miyad milvad sheyed ha'odam v'yoyda l'likov. So the Ramban seems to say that the most important mission of man is to recognize the Borei. But I guess it's really two sides of the same coin. Because if you can't recognize the face of another human being, you for sure can't recognize the face of the Borei. Yeah, you can't be moide shehu bra'anu if you can't recognize another human being. If you're wrapped up within yourself, you can't be noide l'lekeinu shehu bra'anu. And like the two pshatim in v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha that Rashi brings, zekol ha'terekula that Rashi brings in Shabbos. One pirush is Re'acha, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the other pirush is Re'acha, is another Jew. Because the emes says that these two things are two sides of the same coin. Recognizing and connecting with anything that's outside and beyond yourself is part of Avodas Hashem and part of revealing within yourself the Rachum, the Chanun, the Mahu, Af Ato. And Memela, that was the tikkun that Noach acquired through his time in the Teva. Rabbi say